Hello and welcome everybody to this Verbling class. My name is Teacher Amy and today's class is all about the differences between UK and US English. Now I know that a lot of you, when you're studying English, you sometimes come across problems. You have lots of questions about the differences between the English that we use in my country, which is the United Kingdom, and the English that we use in the United States. A lot of the teachers here on Verbling are from the US. Or Canada, although we do have teachers who are based all around the world. And whether you learn to speak English from the UK or the US does not really matter, but it is sometimes handy to know the difference, especially if you want to be really authentic in your speaking. So if you decide that you want to focus on US English and speak proper US English, then it's a great idea to know what the differences are between US and UK English, so you can keep to one or the other. And also, if you're visiting one or the other of the countries, it can be handy to know some of the little vocabulary quirks, differences with tense usage or accent pronunciation, that kind of thing. So if you do have any questions about it, today's the day. We're going to be answering as many as we can. Now, I would like to just point out that I am from the UK. The south part of the UK. I was born in Southampton, so my accent is kind of close to what you'd call BBC English. I speak with received pronunciation as the official name. And if you have any questions about it, I can answer all of them about the UK. I can answer a lot about the US. We're going to be reading some articles. If you are a teacher from the US and you would like to make any comments, do feel free. Or if you know anything, come along and share it with us as we kind of explore some of the differences today between US and UK English. So as well as learning about that, we are going to be practicing our speaking and doing a little bit of reading with a great article from about.com which sort of overviews the main differences. So if you've had experience living in either of those countries and you want to share that with us, do come along and join us. Or if you have plans to visit either the US or the UK to practice your English, then this could be a good lesson to come along to so you can get prepared. Right, before we get started, students, I'll say hello to you in just a moment, and if you'd like to get your brains going, maybe you've had questions that you've always wanted to ask, you've got doubts about it, this is the time to ask them. So before we actually start talking about our topic for today, I'm just going to let you know about 2 pages that you can check out in your spare time. These will help you with your Verbling experience, I hope. Those are both in the chat box there. So the first one that you'll see is my Verbling teacher Facebook page, and that's basically a really handy way to keep in touch with all of the teachers on Verbling, or some of them, or whoever you choose. You can have it appear in your news feed. It can remind you to keep on with your English studying as you go through your week, or as you go on Facebook to waste time. You can be reminded of how you should be studying English. It's a good way to kind of keep an eye on what the teachers are doing, and we often do share handy things on there, so do check that out. Apart from that, if you want some really concrete information about any of the teachers here on Verbling, if you want to find out something specific, or if perhaps you would like to book a private tutoring session with any of the teachers, then the place to go is the Verbling teacher pages, where you can find out all the information you need about each teacher. And you can also see their calendar, their schedule, and book slots with them when it suits you, so you can take a look at their calendar and see when you're free at the same time as them. Also, if you would like to view upcoming classes, you can check out what the classes will be with each of the teachers on their teacher pages. And if you like, you can follow us, and that makes it a lot easier. You don't have to keep logging in and out. So do check out those pages. All right, so who do we have today to talk about this difference between UK and US English for an hour? Let's say hello to the students, and we'll find out if they have any specific questions. So firstly, let me say hello to Rocio. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Rocio. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Where are you from?
I'm from Mexico, but actually I am living in Texas.
You were living where, sorry?
In Texas.
In Texas. Oh, right, excellent. So we have a US inhabitant joining our class today, and I believe it's Mexican Independence Day, is it not?
Yeah.
Well, happy Mexican Independence Day, Rocio.
Thank you.
Although you're in Texas, so you're probably not celebrating it. But anyway, you can still, internally celebrate. All right, so how long have you been living in Texas for?
In Austin, Texas.
Yep. And how long? How many months or weeks or years?
Only 3 months. 3 months
3 months? Okay, 3 months. So that's, well, you must be getting used to it by now. Do you enjoy living there?
Yes, it's very funny living here.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to come back to you, Rosie. You can tell us a bit more about it. It's great to have you in the class, and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Raphael, how are you today?
Hi, Amy. I'm fine, thank you.
Yep, I'm great. So, Raphael, do you have any burning questions that you've got in mind that you're going to ask in this class?
Not yet, but I will find some.
Okay, I'll look forward to that. All right, well, welcome to the class.
Thanks.
Greg, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good, I'm great. So, Greg is living in Hull, I remember. Is that right?
Yes.
Excellent, Greg. We'll be looking to you a bit later for your perspective on what it's like to live in Hull. Okay?
Okay.
Honesty is what I want. Even if you hate it, that's okay. All right. And how's the job search going? Do you have any luck?
No, right now, no.
Still struggling?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Greg. That is tough.
Yeah, that is tough, but that is life too.
It's absolutely right, unfortunately. Okay, who else do we have here today? Seems like I've got a bit of a slow verbling Google Hangouts connection today. I'm going to say hi to... Can you guys still hear me?
I do.
Yes.
Excellent. I don't know why, but it's freezing. Sorry, I was just going to say hello to... All right, can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
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 Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what's happening. I'm going to hope that it will improve as we carry on. So I'm just going to carry on talking and say hello to Kako. How are you, Kako?
Hi, Amy. Nice to see you.
Nice to see
I'm
you
fine.
too. Good. I'm really glad. And how's English studying going?
I am practicing
Good.
about
That's what I like to hear.
2 hours a day.
2 hours a day. My goodness, that's dedication for you. And how's it going? Are you improving?
Yes, I think that I am doing what is possible to improve my English, even though I considered a little difficult for me to oh, teachers
One.
teachers connections broke down. Teachers connection.
Kako, do you specify some some English in order to study?
Hi, Rafael. Can you repeat, Rafael, please?
Uh, do you have a specific English in order to study, and do you prefer study British or American English?
I I like to. I prefer American English, but I think it is very interesting for me. I think it is for us to accustom our hearing to different kinds of accents, and in this sense, I would like to improve my hearing in order to understand better when English people speak. That is hard for me to understand, mainly when English people speak. But I think very beautiful the English accents. But for me, I think it is easier to try to learn. Is easier to learn how Americans speak.
I see.
Kako.
Oh,
Hi guys. I'm
teacher's
sorry that.
back.
Yeah, I've just changed my browser. I don't know whether it was Chrome is having some kind of a problem. It seems to be working better now. Apologies, guys, for that irritating thing. But it was interesting what you were just saying there, Kako. I think that is probably the perspective of quite a few students. And they find American English slightly easier to understand than British English. Would you guys agree with that, the rest of the students who are here at the moment?
I don't know it is true. I think that generally speaking, American English is quite easy to understand, but I am aware of the fact that people usually think about general American English that they can hear in New York in the movies. But if you're thinking about Texas or maybe similar places, I think that will be at the same level of difficulty to understand the British speaker or someone from Texas or I don't know, south of the United States.
Okay, good point, Greg.
Amy,
Yeah.
a little question. What do you consider the best? Focus in a single English, like just American English, and since you are fluent in American English, you go to British English, or try to learn both at the same time? I don't know. Sometimes it can be difficult because there's some differences. Sometimes I get confused when I try to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a very good question. Raphael, I'm going to address that in just a moment. I do want to say hello to Felipe and Alan because I haven't actually said hi to them, so I'll come back to that in just a sec, okay? Felipe, hello.
Hello, teacher.
It's lovely to meet you, and your picture is fascinating. Are you having to blow up Sylvester?
Yeah, Sylvester, yeah.
He's probably like my favorite Looney Tunes character. I love him. He's awesome.
My favorite is Bugs Bunny.
Okay. Bugs Bunny is
Yeah.
also very cool.
Yeah.
All right, Felipe, welcome to the class. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you.
And also, I just said it was great to have you in the class.
Oh, thank you.
Alan, hello.
Hello, Amy. How are you?
Good. Alan, I don't remember whether we've actually met before or not.
Yes, but I haven't logged in Berlin
For a little
for
while?
Yes.
Okay. Well, no worries. It's good to have you today anyway, and I really like your picture. It makes me smile.
Yes, nice.
All right, welcome. And I'll also say hi to Aldona. Hi, Aldona.
Hello, teacher. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right. So, guys, we're going to go back to the discussion that you were sort of starting off when I was struggling with my internet connection. Raphael just asked a good question. He said, when you're learning English, basically, what is it better to do? Is it better to try and just focus on one branch of English? Just decide, okay, I'm going to speak US English, and that's that. Or is it better to try and learn both so that you're able to understand everything? Okay, good point. That's a very good question. My personal recommendation, and this is based not only on being an English teacher, but also on having a very similar problem with Spanish, which has even more different branches. Personally, I feel that the best thing to do is when you are speaking, so actually when you're producing language yourself, speaking, writing, the active part of your language, it's a lot better, it's a lot easier and more straightforward if you try to choose one branch of English and stick with it. And that will depend on many different things. Neither one is better than the other. It depends on your life, it depends on where you live, what nationality you are, what your future plans are. But if I were you, that's what I would do. I would say to yourself, okay, so perhaps Greg, he's living in Hull. The reality is that he's going to be having to use British English for the meantime. So if I were him, I would think, okay, I'm going to try to actively use British English because he has to interact with British people. The point is that even British and American native English speakers sometimes have cross purposes. We understand each other perfectly, but there are vocabulary differences. There are differences in the way that we say things. Just what sounds natural to us is slightly different in some cases. However, Raphael, it also is important to recognize the differences so that you don't kind of get confused and so that you can distinguish between the two, which isn't that difficult. I think probably most of you already know the general rules. But my overall recommendation would be to choose one and stick with it. And it doesn't mean that you always have to only listen to US movies and US interviews. The best way is to just think about it when you're speaking or when you're writing. When you're listening, passively engaging with the language, then try to mix it up as much as you can so that you can really expose yourself to all types of English. Because we're not even covering the other types in today's class. We're not looking at Australia and New Zealand, which is slightly different again. We're not looking at India, which has another kind of English. We're not looking at any of the other places that speak English as their second language. So the more exposure you can have to all those types of English is good as far as I'm concerned. But when you're producing your own language, then I would tend to try and stick with one or the other. Or maybe Australian if you decide to go and live in Australia. All right, so any more initial questions about UK or US English? No? All right, we're going to get into the kind of class discussion. What I would just like to do is to see if, so we know that Rocio is living in Texas and Greg is living in Hull, so that's in the UK. Is anybody else here?
I am not the best example of person who live in the UK.
That's okay, Greg. You're still a valuable example. I just want to check, is anyone else living in an English-speaking country right now? Apart from me. All right. So I just wanted, because we've got these two lovely students in the class, Rocio, I'm going to ask you first. Can you just tell us a little bit about your first impressions of Texas? How difficult is it for you to understand the English, or how difficult was it when you first got there? Were there any weird things that you thought were crazy, or can you tell us a little bit about your initial experience?
Yes, for me it was a little difficult because when I am a child, I was studying in British school with British English. After that, when nowadays I heard the English, the American English, and I am a little confused for me. But
Okay.
in Texas, it's worse because the accent is very particular and specific. One time, my husband and me, we were in the HEB in the supermarket, and an old man, very kindly, uh, say us good night, but the 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 way like he pronounced good night with a Texas accent is very difficult for me understand that little phrase, and is a little difficult in a first place.
Hmm. Yeah, I can absolutely understand that. And I'm sure all of you have experience of this happening, even in your own native languages. Most languages have quite a difference between accents, either like the north or the south of the country, or different areas where they speak the same language but quite differently. So this is not just an experience that you have when you're learning another language, but I think it intensifies because you're not expecting it or you're not used to it. So Rocio, after living there for 3 months, you say, how is the accent to you now? Are you able to understand it okay?
A little bit because I work on in my house.
Mm-hmm.
I am a system engineer and I am a freelance. And it, for me it's a little difficult um, talking with another people in English. This is a reason because I try to learn in Berlin.
Yeah.
But to the people when I am go out and talking with the Texas people, all of they are very kindly, and he tried to repeat me when I don't understand.
That's great. I'm very glad to hear that. Well, thanks, Rocio, for sharing your view. I'm now going to ask Greg if he would just share a little bit. Greg, can you just tell us a little bit about Hull? How long have you lived there, firstly?
I have lived here since for 2 years, about 2 years now. What I can say about it is one of the places that actually have one of this the accent here and the way how the people speak is quite challenging because the first day in this place it was like I went to the job center, I started speaking, they perfectly understand, but what I heard from them, I have, maybe it was 60% I understand from what they said to me, so it was quite confusing. It's not the easiest way because personally, I started learning in Poland and I really started listening a lot of Americans. There were some British people that I heard, not too many. It's not because I prefer one language or the other, because actually this is the people that they do some kind of stuff and they present it, and I was more familiar with this kind of language. So when I came here, I started struggling with the differences with this language, and to this day, I think this is what I hear come out from their mouth. It is not really that I don't understand the words. It is the word sometimes sounds for me a little bit different because even if I live here, there's a quite strange fact because I didn't have too much chance to work with the British people. So most of the things that I did here, it was solve the problems in a bank, solve the problems agency responsible for the flat, this kind of things. I don't speak too much. Maybe some people, even if I was in the cinema, I had some one situation that I just, the film was great and it just came out from the cinema, and someone asked me and I didn't understand for the first time, so it was quite shocking because I have a general understanding of them, but there's still, I'm not spent most of the time with the people living in this city because I didn't have a chance to work for a longer period of the time and still speaking with the British people, so it still gets stuck with mostly with American English because there are so many interesting movies and interesting things in, and it's not really, I don't want to be I want to be well understood. I prefer to listen or watch everything what is interesting for me, not really thinking I'm gonna not be in a situation I'm gonna watch BBC News all day. It would be boring. I don't want that.
All right, you bring up a really good point, Greg. So it sounds like you've had a similar experience to Rocio. Like, the less you interact with the local people, the less chance you have. So the key really to familiarizing yourself with the different accent is basically just exposure. So all that really is listening to it. And the more you do that, the easier it becomes. But you're right, Greg. A lot of the media, the resources and stuff out there is in US English, so it can be hard to find stuff that keeps you entertained, which is from the UK, admittedly. Okay, so guys, let's have a look at the article that we've got, because what I want to do really is to just point out the key things that you can differentiate these two types of English with. Seems to be working okay now.
Suggest something which can be useful, but I'm not sure if people want to hear it.
Okay.
There is a book. I have a title if someone is interested. So this is a book written by an American who live in London. So he made a lot of this, points. What are the basic differences? So it could be good explanation for the people who want to find out more about both languages.
Thank you, Greg. That's really helpful. If you remember the title, would you mind popping it in the chat box, and if anyone wants to read up?
Okay, I have one. It's quite great, but it's not the easiest.
That's all right. For advanced learners, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so what we're going to do is take a look at this article. Thank you, Greg and Rocio, for sharing your experiences. We're going to read it through and we're going to discuss what we come up with. So I'm going to get Alan. If you could read just from here, please, Alan. While.
Okay. Well, there are certainly many more varieties of English. American English and British English are the two varieties that are taught in most ESL, EFL programs. Generally, it is agreed that no one version is correct. However, there are certainly preferences in use. The three major differences between American British English are pronunciation. Should I continue?
Yeah, just read the bullet points if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, pronunciation. Difference in both vowels and consonants, as well as stress and intonation. Vocabulary. Differences in nouns and verbs, especially phrasal verbs usage. Spelling. Differences are generally found in certain prefix and suffix form.
Thank you, Alan. Really lovely reading. Okay, so we've got the three main differences, guys. Just from my perspective, the most important one really is this. Because, as with every language, the phrasal verbs in English and the sort of slang or the natural sounding English is really what differentiates these two brands, I guess you could say, most. However, there's still not a huge difference. And pronunciation, yes, okay, I think that's obvious to you guys, but actually there are only a few little differences in pronunciation. And unless you're an extremely advanced speaker and you want your accent to be one or the other, pronunciation is not something that you need to worry about until you get to that really advanced level. Because really, in general, most of the English words are pronounced the same. Spelling, yeah, there are a couple of differences, and this only is relevant when you're writing. So, anyone have any questions about anything so far? Nope.
No, but there's one thing. Punctuation is quite different.
Okay, punctuation. Yeah, I guess we can put that into the spelling section. Okay, Greg. That out. Okay, Aldona, if you could continue reading, please, from the most important rule of thumb.
Yes, the most important rule of thumb is to try to be consistent in your usage. If you decide that you want to use American English spellings, then be consistent in your spelling. Example, the color of the orange is also its flavor. Color is American spelling and flavor is British. This is, of course, not always easy or possible. The following guide is meant to point out the principal differences between these two varieties of English.
Thank you, Aldona. All right, so we're not going to focus too heavily on the spelling today, guys, because it's something that you can sort of read up on yourself. It's also something that computers can help you out with. Generally, everything's set to US English, so if you're writing something in UK English, which is also used here in New Zealand and in Australia, you do have to change your settings, but it's quite easy to start learning the differences because there are, for once, quite strict rules about how to spell things in American English. So, for example, you miss out U's in a lot of words and you add them in with British English, or you spell things with a Z instead of an S. So there are really some pretty general rules. This is probably quite a good point that I would like to read and talk about for a moment. So I'm going to ask Kako if you could read use of the present perfects.
Use of the present perfect. Can you hear, teacher?
I can. Thank you, Kako.
Okay, thank you. In British English, the present perfect is used to express an action that has occurred in the recent past that has an effect on the present moment. For example, I've lost my key. Can you help me look for it? Can you help me look for it? In American English, the following is also possible. I lost my key. Can you help me look for it?
Keep going, Kako.
In British English, the above would be considered incorrect. However, both forms are generally accepted in standard American English. Other differences involving the use of the present perfect in British English and simple past in American English include already, just, and yet.
Okay. So can you read out these examples as well, please, Kako?
British English. I've just had lunch. I've already seen that film. Have you finished your homework yet? American English. I just had lunch, or I've just had lunch. I've already seen that film, or I already saw that film. Have you finished your homework yet? Or did you finish your homework yet?
Thank you, Kako. Beautifully read. All right, so before I ask you about your questions or opinions on this, guys, let me just add my personal perspective. This is absolutely correct. So in the UK, and when you hear me speak, or other British teachers, you'll hear the present perfect, because we always use it in these types of situations. And in American English, so when you listen to movies and stuff, yes, it's true that they're a bit more flexible, so they're actually open to using both. I don't know whether I particularly disagree, whether I agree with this part here, because I would say that it's more of a in the UK, yes, we would use the present perfect tense for these things, but we wouldn't consider someone saying, I lost my key, can you help me look for it, incorrect. In fact, I doubt native speakers would hardly even notice that, to be honest with you, unless they're an English teacher. So it's not like you need to worry about this, but it is something to be aware of, and something to notice. And if you decide that you do want to speak British English as opposed to American, then this is one really important good thing to remember. However, if you decide to go for US English, it doesn't really matter. You can worry either way. Just want to say hello to Jose, if he's there. Nope. All right. Well, I will say hi to him later. Okay, so let me just ask you guys, did you guys already know about this rule? Is this something that surprises you, or did you already know about it? Let's see what Raphael has to say about this.
Well, I focus my efforts in studying English in studying British English. I'm studying some books from Cambridge, so they work a lot with past participle and present perfect and something like that. And so I'm getting acquainted to use present perfect instead of the simple past. But I haven't known about this rule. I think it's interesting for me because I think it's easier to when you have more options to use the sentence, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I was actually going to ask you, is it easier when you have more options, or is it easier when you have less? Sometimes I don't know about that. So
I think it's...
let's see what else. Yeah?
No, I think it's easier. You have to... you can have more choices, and you have because you get used to since you have more choices to choose how we're going to say. I think it's easier to remember. Since you have more options, you have you feel more free to say things how you want.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. All right, thank you, Raphael. Just want to ask Aldona. Aldona, what do you feel about it? Were you aware of this rule? It's not really a rule. It's more like a sort of guideline, I guess.
Using simple past and present perfect?
Yeah.
Well, I don't really care what tense I use, as I don't live in an English-spoken country, so sometimes I use present perfect, sometimes simple past.
All right, so there you go. You've gone to the American way, which is absolutely fair enough. Very good. Thank you, Aldona. All right, sorry, just a bit of feedback there. We're going to carry on with the next part, which is something else that's a little bit quirky. So, who can I ask to read now? I'm going to ask Rocio, if you would like to read for us, please.
Okay.
Possession.
Okay, possession. There are two forms to express possession in English: have or have got. Do you have a car? Have you got a car? He hasn't got any friends. He doesn't have any friends. She has a beautiful new home. She's got a beautiful new home. While both forms are correct and accepted in both British and American English, have got, have you got, he hasn't got, etc., is generally the preferred form in British English, while most speakers of American English employ the have, do you have, he doesn't have, etc.
Thank you. Rocio, could you just read this part as well, because this is also relevant.
Okay. The verb get. The past participle of the verb get is gotten in American English. Example, he's gotten much better at playing tennis. British English, he's got much better at playing tennis.
Thank you. Great reading. Well done, Rocio. Okay, so as you can see, guys, this is another little quirk. And the whole point of this class really is to point out how we speak differently from each other so that you can, when you're listening to it, you can recognize this. And if you would like to focus on one or the other, as we mentioned at the beginning of class, then you know what to do. There's several things that you can do, several steps that you can take. So this possession one is absolutely true. We use the have got a lot more in the UK, so we would say stuff like, have you got a car? Has he got any friends? We use got quite a bit. In American English, do you have a car? And this is when I am listening as a native speaker to different versions of English, this stands out a little bit more to me. It's quite an obvious thing when you're speaking. However, both are correct and both are used in both countries, so it really doesn't matter. Let's see if Jose is there. Jose? No? All right, I'm going to see what Alan thinks. Alan, were you aware about this difference between have and have got?
Yes, I noticed that in the British English they use the got, and yes, and I'm familiar with that, so I have not many troubles.
All right, and do you find one or the other easier? Is it easier to use just the straight have for you? Or doesn't it make much difference?
I don't know. I guess like I'm from Mexico, so I'm used to use the American English. But I work with British people, so sometimes I had to use, their way of speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. So these things, guys, as we mentioned at the beginning of class, and I just want to kind of reiterate, and this article did mention just before we started reading, that when you're listening to different kinds of English, it's good to be exposed to all these different things. But when you're speaking, it does make it, I don't know, I suppose it facilitates communication if you're consistent in your usage. So if you decide that you want to speak US English, these are some good things to note about it and to start doing when you're speaking. And also UK. And so you might think, oh, those are tiny things, and yeah, that's true. But it can be a case of all these tiny things adding up to really great communication with a British or American person. And if you're dealing in business or working with people, the more confident and good they feel about communicating with you, the better. And these are some points that you can use to help you with that. So really sort of deciding which English you're going to use, and native speakers won't probably be consciously aware of it even, but it will help them have that sense of, wow, I can really communicate with that person and I don't feel like we have misunderstandings, which is quite an important thing if you're using English for your work. All right, any other questions or comments about the possession part?
Possession, no. I just want to point out that verb get, gotten, is not exactly the American English thing. It is more old-fashioned English that just become a standard in American English, and British people just replace it gotten by got. Quite weird.
Thank you, Greg. It is actually. You know what? I actually learned a few other things about that when I was watching a great video series called "The History of English in 10 Minutes." And if you want to look that up, it's on Facebook, on my Verbling Facebook page. Sorry?
Can you give me a link to it?
Yes, I will. I'll do that at the end of class, Greg. It's really interesting because you're right. Actually, American English has kept some of the old-fashioned words that we used to use in the UK like hundreds of years ago. And it's kind of funny because usually the new country takes on, you know, new words, but in this case it's the reverse in some ways. So, interesting point. Okay, let's read about vocabulary because this is probably the thing that sticks out the most. And I'm going to get Raphael to read it, please.
Vocabulary. Probably the major differences between British and American English lies in the choice of vocabulary. Some words mean different things in the two varieties. For example, mean, American English; angry, bad-humored, British English; not generous, tight-fisted; rubber, American English; condom, British English; too used to erase pencil markings. There are many more examples, too many for me to list here. If there is a difference in usage, your dictionary will note the different meanings in its definition of the term. Many vocabulary items are also used in one form and not in the other. One of the best examples of this is the terminology used for automobiles. American English, hood; British English, bonnet; American English, trunk; British English, boot; American English, truck; British English, lorry. Once again, your dictionary should list whether the term is used in British English or American English. For a more complete list of vocabulary differences between British and American English, use this British versus American English vocabulary tool.
Thank you, Raphael. All right, so this is a point that I'm sure that you all know, and I'm sure you're all aware of, and the reason why it's probably, I would say, the most important is simply because if you are inconsistent in your usage of vocabulary, it can just cause misunderstandings or confusion. Basically, British people know what Americans call all of these things. So I know the words hood, trunk, and truck, but I would not use them myself. I would say bonnet, boot, and lorry. So if you go to one country or the other, you can use either of the words, and you may find people who go, what? But they'll be rare. The main point is that when you're speaking, your English comes across to a native speaker in a certain way. And if you use a mixture of vocabulary, it can get a little bit confusing, especially with some, like it mentions here, rubber. Because if you consistently use like British English and then you say rubber, it can be a bit confusing as to what you mean. Okay, the context is obviously very important as well. This is quite an easy thing to overcome because there are lots of resources on the internet which tell you what you say in UK, what you say in US, and if I were you guys, I would just, as we said before, stick to one or the other and just use those words. You'll be able to recognize the other words when they're used by other people, but try to stay consistent with your own choice of vocabulary. So let's just have a little bit of a brainstorm and think about the words that spring to mind straight away as words that are different in one or the other. Does anyone have any ideas?
Many things. Garbage can could be in British. I think it will be. Wait a second, I don't remember the word.
That's a great one. Yeah.
Rubbish bin. Yeah, rubbish bin.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So
there will be intersection in crossroads.
Yep, very good.
Yeah, there will be what we think of. Mm. I remember this accelerator and gas pedal.
Great ones, thank you, Greg.
What else?
Anyone else think of any? Just feel free to join in, guys. It's quite nice to have a bit of a brainstorm and come up with the ones that you've actually had experience with in your speaking language or whatever. So type in the chat box or, yep, elevator and lift, that's from Kako. Any others?
I use it, but I don't have a table in my head.
You don't have a table in your head. Fair enough. All right, so some ones that maybe could be changed to you because they don't come up much. Okay, centre, that's a spelling difference. Thank you, Kako. So centre with an ER is US and with an RE is UK, and that's a bit of a rule. ER, US, RE, UK. We've already mentioned a lorry, which is the UK word for a track. Okay. Any others?
Flat and apartment.
Yeah, that's a good one. So in the UK we say...
Not really, because flat and apartment are interchangeable in the US, not in the UK.
Very nice. Thank you for adding that, Greg. Although if you say apartment, people will definitely know what you're talking about. Because they can cause some confusion. In the UK, we say biscuit for cookie. And biscuit is actually something totally different in the US. And I don't know whether you've come across... Rocio, can you explain what biscuit is in the USA?
Biscuit in the USA?
Yeah. Do you know what it is? Have you ever had it?
No. I'm familiar with the UK term.
All right. Well, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I believe it's something that you eat with. It's like a savoury thing, a bit like what we call in the UK a scone or a scone. So the food things can be a bit confusing.
Okay.
I'm thinking of some ones that come into my mind, guys, because in New Zealand there's a bit of a mixture between both, and some of the things I say are questioned here, and they go, what? So these are the ones I'm writing down for you. Do check out the link that they give you in this with the British versus American English vocabulary tool, because that's really handy. And what else? Oh, one very important one, which is to do with food. There we go. All right, we'll leave it at that. If you come up with any others, do add them to the list. Thank you, Kako. Some good ones there. Actually, we usually call a store a shop in the UK. A store or a shop. All right, let's just read about prepositions. These are some little things that you can add in to make your English more authentic. So, who should read? Greg, please.
Okay. What should I read? Preposition, right. There's also a few differences in preposition use, including the followings: American English, on the weekend; British English, at the weekend; American English, on a team; British English, in a team; American English, please write me soon; British English, please write to me soon.
Beautiful. All right, so these are quite few and far between, these examples. But if you do come across a difference with prepositions, just think to yourself, is this because it's a difference in the brand of English, or is this, that will generally be the explanation. So if you're not sure about a preposition and you've seen it come up in different ways, one of the ways to check that is to ask yourself, where am I reading this piece of writing from? Who wrote this? And that will help you. All right, last little bit about grammar. I'm going to ask Alan, so you read past simple, past participles, please.
Yes. The following verbs have two acceptable forms of the past simple past participle in both American and British English. However, the irregular form is generally more common in British English. The first form of the two and the regular form is more common to American English. Born, burnt, or burnt. Dream, dreamed, or dreamed.
All right,
Lean.
so just a sec, Alan. Just because the pronunciation for example, this is actually dreamt rather than dreamed, okay?
Okay.
So that's really the way you tell. So it's dreamt or dreamed.
And
Sorry, you go.
okay. Lean, leaned, or leaned.
Length. Mm-hmm.
Length.
Yep.
Okay. Learn, learned, or learned.
Good.
Smell, smelt, or smelt.
Mm-hmm.
Spell, spelt, or spelled. Spill, spilt, or spilled. Spoil, spoilt, or spoiled.
All right, great, thank you. So when it comes to irregular verbs, I'm sure that the preference is always to go for the easiest, right? So irregular verbs are a pain. It's probably easier for you guys just to remember these ones here. But they are quite an obvious indicator of American English. So you wouldn't hear a British person say, "Oh, I smell the rose." We'd always say, "Oh, smelt a rose." And it's probably not very important for you guys, only something to notice. And again, in conjunction with the rest of the points that we've mentioned in this class, it's a useful thing to know to aid in your communication, and also to kind of just give you more of an idea of how British and US English is a bit different and how you can start noticing it if it's important to you. Obviously, it may not be, but it might be helpful for you to recognize, especially if you're at that stage where you're very advanced, you really want to get your English sounding like a native speaker, and you need to make this decision and go down one of the two routes. So I hope it's been helpful for you. Does anyone have any other questions about it before we go?
Teacher,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know if the end ID instead of T, as in those words, in those verbs,
Yeah.
is the same. If the pronunciation is the same.
No, the pronunciation is different,
Smell.
Kako.
Smelt and smelt.
Yes, but it's okay. So when it's a native speaker speaking, it's very easy to distinguish the difference between smelt and smelled. Not only because of the end of the word, but also the accent. Because you have an American accent if you say smelt, and you have a British accent if you say smelt. For you guys, it's not very important because either one is fine, and probably we're not going to pick up on that unless your accent is near perfect. So if you really want to be native.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, because I see in the verb that sometimes S is replaced by Z, but actually in Oxford English it is always Z instead S. So I'm thinking about the difference between Oxford English and American English in using these verbs. When we make these sounds, it is every verb we thinking more when you speak as a British native speaker. When you using the verb, it is S in the middle of the. You're thinking more like a S or like a Z.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, good point, Greg. So the spelling is different with those words, but actually the pronunciation is exactly the same. So with the word realised, there's the Z sound, whether you use an S or not. You don't say realised. Okay?
Okay, because
Good point.
yeah.
Thank you. You've been very insightful this lesson. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you also to you, Rocio.
Can you give a
Thank you,
link?
teacher.
The link, I will. I'm gonna go and post it on my Facebook page so that we can share it with everybody, Greg. It's called The History of English in 10 Minutes. It's a really interesting video series, kind of funny as well. So take care, everybody. Have a great day. If you want to practice some more speaking, come to my next class and I'll see you in a few moments. Other than that, I will hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Teacher.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See you soon.